You know what's funny? The louder you screamed the truth, the more they plugged their ears. The more honest you were, the more they labeled you as the villain. But then you went quiet, and that's when the world finally started to choke on everything. You never said, that silence. Oh, that silence screamed louder than all your explanations ever did. See, people don't listen to words. They listen to consequences. And when you stopped defending yourself, when you just stood back and let the weight of their actions punch them in the gut, it hit different. It hit deep. That's when they looked around and realized you weren't crazy. You were just done. You ever try fixing something that doesn't want to be fixed? It's like shouting directions to a deaf man on a sinking boat. He ain't hearing you, and he's dragging you down while you're trying to save him. And that's what explaining feels like. You're wasting breath on people who already made their minds up. They ain't stupid. No, they knew exactly what they were doing to you. The disrespect wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. And you were too kind, too hopeful, too human to believe that people would hurt someone who only wanted to love, to help, to lift. You thought, if you just explained, enough cried, enough showed them enough, they'd wake up. But they didn't. You weren't talking to the wrong ears. No, you were talking to the wrong hearts. Let me tell you something. Most won't. Silence is a weapon, but not the kind that they expect. Not the kind that burns bridges or slams doors. No, silence is the echo of your absence. It's the noise they hear when they realize you're not coming back to clean up their mess. You're not coming back to make them feel better. And you're damn sure not coming back to explain why you left. That's the twist, kid. The moment you stop explaining, they start thinking regret. Oh, it creeps in, real slow, like a poison. At first they laugh. They pretend they didn't care. But when the room stays empty, when the calls go unanswered, when they see you thriving without them, without even glancing back, that's when it breaks them. You gave them chances, too many, and every time they treated it like a joke. But the last one, the one wrapped in silence, that was the punchline. That was the lesson they couldn't ignore. See, you stopped talking, and life started talking for you. Your glow got louder, your success, your peace, your detachment. It echoed. It exposed their foolishness. And guess what? Now they sit there, playing your words back in their head, wishing they'd listened when you were still willing to speak. But it's too late. They mistook kindness for weakness, and now they're praying for explanations you'll never give again. They don't talk about what happens after the silence, do they? After you vanish, after the door doesn't slam it, just closes slowly, quietly, coldly. That's the part they never prepare for. See, people expect you to explode, to beg to explain yourself one last time, so they can feel like they still have control, but you didn't. You just stopped. And that silence, it was surgical. It cut deeper than any scream. Because when you walk away without noise, without tears, without a warning, it makes them panic, makes them replay every moment, trying to figure out where it went wrong. They thought you'd always be there, standing at the door with reasons and apologies, trying to make them understand the damage they caused. But this time, you left the pieces where they fell and walked right over them. And now they're choking on that silence. It's haunting. It's screaming every word you never said, every feeling you buried, every time they laughed while you bled. It's a mirror one they never wanted to look into. Because when you're gone and there's no more explaining, they're left to face the raw, ugly truth. They were the problem. They were the reason you changed, the reason your heart grew cold. And the worst part, you didn't change for revenge. You didn't go silent to punish them. You just got tired. Tired of talking to walls. Tired of being the only one fighting. Tired of being blamed for your own damn pain. So you walked, and the silence you left behind. It speaks in ways no apology ever could. Let me break it down, for you real raw people don't miss you when you explain. They miss you when you don't. When they text and you don't reply. When they call and it rings out. When they see your name but can't reach you anymore. That's what cracks them open. Not your pleas, not your tears, your absence. That's the storm. That's what wakes them up at 300 a.m. with a tight chest and a memory they can't escape. And they remember. Oh, they remember not what you said, but how you stopped saying it. They remember how the warmth left your voice, how the care vanished from your eyes, how you went from trying to fix everything to watching it burn without blinking. That's the shift. That's the part they never recover from. When you go from, let's talk about this, to do what you want from, I'm here to silence, because silence means you've accepted it. You've accepted that they'll never change, that no matter how many times you explain your worth, they'll always treat it like a bargain. So you stopped selling yourself cheap. You took your worth back quietly, powerfully, permanently. And now they're left with their ego, their pride, and 1,000 unsent messages sitting in their chest, knowing damn well they were the ones who pushed you to the edge. And you didn't. Fall you flew. And here's what really tears them apart. Your glow didn't fade when you left. It got brighter, stronger, colder. See, they expected you to fall apart without them. That's how selfish people think. They believe they're the center of your world, the sun to your sky. But when you went silent, when you stopped explaining, something changed inside you. You didn't crash. You recalibrated. You leveled up. And that silence they thought meant weakness. It was discipline. It was control. It was you reclaiming your peace brick by damn brick. You stopped explaining, not because you had nothing to say, but because they weren't worthy of your voice anymore. They lost the privilege to hear you. And that's when it really sank in. You weren't the one who needed them. They needed you. That's the thing about people. They want you loud when you're hurting, because your noise comforts them. It tells them they still matter. But the second you go quiet, the second you stop reacting, they feel it in their bones. That silence. It hits like a slap, because now they're left to deal with their own echoes. No more blaming you, no more playing victim, just them and the wreckage of what they broke and what eats at them most. You're no longer giving them access to the version of you they never deserved in the first place. You were loyal, you were present, you were fire, and they spit on that. Now they stand outside the kingdom they laughed at while it was being built, watching the walls rise higher. With every day, you don't speak that silence. It's the new language of kings, you see. Not everyone is meant to understand you. And the harder you try to explain yourself to the blind, the more you exhaust your soul. You were never supposed to convince them. You were supposed to walk away. And the joker in me. Oh, I learned that the hard way. Too, I explained, I begged. I showed my wounds and hoped they'd stop swinging. But people like that, they don't stop until you bleed silence, until you stand there, expressionless with nothing left to give. That's when they notice. That's when the weight of every ignored warning, every dismissed emotion, every snide little smirk, they feel it like bricks falling on their conscience. And guess what? Most of them can't carry it. Most of them crack under the pressure of their own guilt. But by then, you're already gone. Not just physically, but mentally, spiritually. You reached a level they can't touch, and all they have now are memories soaked in regret. So let them sit with it. Let them wonder why you stopped explaining. Let them overthink every silence, every glance you no longer give. You owe them nothing, not closure, not comfort, not clarity. Your peace is not up for negotiation. Your silence is not a blank page for their justifications. It's the final chapter, the one they never thought you'd write. the one where you stop being the victim and become the lesson. You know what? They don't expect that the one who kept giving, kept forgiving, kept trying. They don't expect that one to go silent because they confuse love with servitude. They thought you were supposed to keep bleeding just to keep them warm. But when you stopped explaining when your voice disappeared from the equation, they were forced to sit alone with the mirror. And mirrors don't lie. They show everything they tried to avoid, all the manipulation, all the little digs, the lies they swore. You were too sensitive to understand. The moments they mocked your pain and played dumb when you tried to spell it out. That silence, it exposed every one of their sins and did it louder than your words ever could. See, pain don't always show up in screams. Sometimes it walks in, calmly shuts the door, and never comes back. You think you need to explain why you're walking away. No, let them feel it. Let them wake up and realize the messages they didn't reply to were the last. Let them understand, too late, that the apologies you waited for never came, because they didn't think you'd actually leave. And now they're stuck with that empty feeling, that hollow ache, because the one they took for granted finally turned to stone. You're not cruel. You're not heartless. You just ran out of reasons to keep breaking yourself for people who clap when you fall. And your silence, it was the sound of survival. They'll say, you changed. Oh, they'll whisper it to each other. Talk about how different you became, but they'll never admit why. They won't say it's because they mistook your kindness for weakness. They won't say it's because they spit on the very hands that held them up. No, because that would mean accepting the truth. That would mean admitting they broke something that was once soft and alive and full of light. And now that light's gone, that warmth they felt when you walked into a room, cold, that comfort in your voice. Silence. They can feel the shift, even if they can't explain it. And that's the irony. They're the ones explaining now to their friends, to their ego, to their own reflection. But the only person who deserved the explanation, you and they wasted that chance. So stay silent, not because you're afraid, but because you're done. Wasting gold on ears tuned for dust. Let them sit in their confusion. Let the silence do what your words couldn't. Make them realize that losing you wasn't a moment. It was a series of choices, their choices. And now the final choice is yours, to rise without them, to thrive in the absence of everything they were too blind to value. That silence, that's not you giving up. That's you winning quietly like a storm that doesn't announce itself, but leaves everything changed in its path. And here's what they'll never admit out loud. They heard you the whole damn time. Every word, every cry, every late night message you rewrote 5 times before hitting send. They weren't deaf. They were dismissive. It's not that they didn't understand you. It's that they didn't care. Until your silence forced them to. See, there's nothing louder than the voice you take away from someone who used to rely on it. They thought your loyalty was limitless, that no matter what they did, you'd always come back, always explain, always try again. But silence is sacred. Silence is the point where self-respect becomes louder than love. And when you hit that point, oh, everything changes, not for you, but for them. Because you've already made peace with the loss. They're the ones just starting to feel it. You gave them so many outs, so many signs. You showed them where they were bleeding you dry, and instead of fixing it, they told you you were being dramatic. They minimized every red flag you pointed at, like it was a game. They got comfortable ignoring your pain because you kept explaining it. But when you stopped, when you finally let the silence fill the room, that's when they started noticing the weight of what they'd done. Not because you said anything, but because the absence of your voice was deafening. It left a void, and now they sit with it, replaying the conversations they ended, the arguments they started, the disrespect they called just a joke. They laughed while you were breaking. Now they're silent, too, but not because they choose to be, because they have nothing left to say. You see, there's a moment that comes when silence stops being passive, when it becomes a declaration that you're no longer available for disrespect, that your heart is closed for renovations and they don't get the keys anymore. They want to ask, what happened? Nothing happened. You just woke up one day and decided your peace was worth more than their chaos. You stopped explaining, and they finally understood that love has limits, that effort isn't infinite, that even the kindest people have a point where they break, but they don't break loud. They break away. They walk calm, collected, unreachable. And here's the darkest part. They'll tell people, you changed. They'll cry, victim to those who never saw the damage they did behind closed doors. But you won't say a word. Not because you're weak, but because you don't owe anyone your side of the story. The truth doesn't need defense. Let them talk. Let them paint you as cold, as distant, as not like you used to be. That's fine. That means the silence worked. That means they felt the shift. And that means the lesson landed. And trust me, one day, they'll be sitting in a quiet room, staring at their phone, thinking about everything you said, and they'll finally understand. It wasn't your voice they should have listened to. It was your silence. They should have feared. What stings the most isn't the silence itself. It's what it says. It's what it represents. Because silence, from someone who used to fight, used to explain, used to bleed through every word just to be understood, that silence screams betrayal louder than any confrontation ever could, and they know it. They feel it, deep like a sharp breath that never finishes. It makes them restless, makes them wonder what they missed, what they ignored. They scroll back through old texts, looking for clues they laughed at before. Now suddenly every ignored message, every dry reply, every brush off feels like a nail in the coffin. And they realize you were holding everything together, not them, not the love you. You were the glue, and they spent all their time blaming you for cracks they were creating. The silence you gave them was a mirror, and now they're drowning in it because they finally see themselves for what they are. The reason you stop speaking the cause of your detachment. And the worst part, you didn't leave out of anger. No, you left because you outgrew them, outgrew their childish games, their manipulative silence, their fake apologies and half-hearted efforts. You didn't slam the door, you just stopped knocking, and that subtle exit, it eats at their ego. It dismantles the illusion that they mattered more to you than your peace. Because now they see it. They were just noise. And your silence was the upgrade. They were chaos, and you craved clarity. So you gave it to yourself without permission, without negotiation, without a single explanation. They thought silence meant weakness. But it was strength, power, and precision. It was your final act. You bowed out of the performance, left them alone on stage with the script. They thought you'd keep acting out. They were so sure they had you figured out, thought they could pull test your limits, and you'd still come running. But you didn't. You vanished from their rhythm, and now their world feels offbeat. They speak, and there's no response. They reach, and there's no hand. That's what gets them. That's what really breaks them. Because it's not just that you're gone. It's that you're not coming back. And that's the chapter they never expected. You weren't just a moment in their life. You were the light, the support, the storm, the calm, the energy. You were the one they underestimated. And now they see that silence wasn't a pause. It was the full stop, the ending. No fireworks, no drama, just done. And that kind of ending, That's what leaves them up at night. That's what haunts them when they laugh with others but feel hollow inside. Because your silence wasn't empty. It was filled with every word they ignored, every truth. They mocked every piece of you they took for granted. And now the silence is all they have left of you. And it's too loud to ignore, too permanent to fix. You want to know the real beauty of it. The silence didn't just punish them, it freed you. For the first time in a long time, you weren't explaining yourself to someone who didn't care. You weren't trying to prove your worth to people who were too blind, too broken, or too arrogant to see it. The silence gave you your power back. It reminded you that peace isn't found in screaming louder. It's found in walking away quieter. It's in no longer feeling the urge to be understood by people who were committed to misunderstanding you. That's the shift. That's when everything changes, when you no longer need them to see your side. You just walk. You just glow. You just become something. They can't reach anymore. Not because you're hiding, but because they lost the privilege to stand where you stand. You didn't go silent out of revenge. You did it to protect your sanity. You did it to stop the bleeding. You did it because every explanation you gave was like setting yourself on fire to keep them warm, and you were tired of burning. You were tired of explaining why you deserve respect, tired of explaining why you're hurting, tired of explaining why the bare minimum wasn't enough. So you closed the door, not with hate, but with finality. And the thing is, they felt it. They may never say it, but they felt that silence hit their soul. They saw the shift in your eyes, the way your smile stopped reaching your eyes, the way your responses became colder, quieter, less desperate, until they became nothing. That nothing that's where your strength was born. Now they're left with echoes. Echoes of everything you used to say and everything you no longer will. They're haunted by the ghost of your old self, the version of you that tried, that stayed, that explained. And as they scroll through your life from a distance, watching you heal, watching you rise, watching you glow without them, they'll realize the truth, that you didn't need closure. You became it. That silence wasn't weakness. It was wisdom. That walking away without explanation wasn't cold. It was calculated because nothing you could have said would have changed who they are, and nothing they could have done now can undo who you became without them. So let them sit in it. Let them wonder. Let them break themselves, trying to decode the silence they once mocked. You're not cruel. You just finally chose yourself. And choosing yourself, that's the loudest thing you ever did, even in silence. Especially in silence. Because real strength doesn't yell. It disappears, it glows, it rebuilds. It stops asking to be heard and becomes the storm they never saw coming. And now they're stuck in the very space they thought you'd never leave. Except it's empty, cold, echoing with everything they refused to hear when it mattered. That silence, it wraps around their thoughts like a snake, tight, unrelenting. And the more they try to ignore it, the louder it gets. That's what happens when someone realizes they lost the one person who actually gave a damn. The one who explained, who fought, who tried, but the trying stopped. The effort vanished, and they can't wrap their head around it because they always thought they had time. They thought you'd keep showing up, keep breaking yourself, just to give them clarity. But you didn't. You left their confusion exactly where they left your pain unanswered. And maybe the part that haunts them the most is how peaceful you look now. How focused, how unbothered. Because the old you would have tried to fix it. You would have reached out, apologized for how they hurt you. You would have explained your silence, justified your distance, made them feel better about losing you. But this version of you, now this version finally realized that love isn't supposed to feel like begging. Respect isn't supposed to be a negotiation. And peace isn't something you should have to constantly defend. So you stopped trying. You stopped explaining. You stopped giving CPR to dead connections. And in doing so, you gave yourself something priceless. Freedom. They'll call it ego. They'll call it pride. They'll say you changed, but that's only because they don't know the weight of what you carried. They don't know how many times you sat in silence, holding back tears, swallowing words that burned your throat just to keep the peace. They don't know what it took for you to walk away without turning into the monster they kept accusing you of being. That silence wasn't a weapon. It was a final act of mercy. You spared them your wrath. You spared them your truth. You spared them the explanation that would have ripped through their excuses like fire through dry grass. But they didn't earn that closure. They didn't deserve your voice anymore, and so you gave them the one thing they couldn't manipulate, your absence. And in that absence, you became louder than ever. Not in noise, but in presence, in growth, in strength. You stopped defending yourself and started rebuilding yourself. They thought they broke you, but really they freed you. And now every step you take in silence is a reminder to them of everything they lost. Because silence, real intentional silence, isn't just an ending. It's a transformation. It's evolution. It's you becoming untouchable. And no matter what they say now, no matter how they twist the narrative, they'll never be able to escape that one undeniable truth they finally understood, but only when you stopped explaining. You know what really eats them alive. Now it's not just that. You left, it's how you left. Without a storm, without a scene, without a final goodbye. You didn't need to scream or burn the bridge. You just walked off it while they were still, standing on the edge, laughing, thinking you'd never jump. But you didn't jump. You built wings mid-air. You found peace in places they never thought you'd reach. And now, while they still replay old conversations in their head, you're living a new life they no longer have access to. That's what kills them, access. It's not just the silence that hurts them. It's the fact that they can't break it, that no matter how much they whisper, now your world doesn't echo back. They scream into your absence and get nothing but the sound of their own guilt, because silence has a memory, and yours remembers everything, every cold reply, every ignored effort, every time they left you on read, like you weren't worth a response. Now you're the one not responding, and they call it cruel. Funny, isn't it? When you were hurting, you were too emotional, but now that you're silent, you're cold. That's how it goes. They don't notice your pain until it becomes their punishment. They don't recognize your value until your presence becomes a privilege they no longer have. And trust me, there's no pain like watching someone you took for granted move on without you. No revenge like watching the person you broke walk past you, whole head high, without a glance. Let them wonder. Let them overthink. Let them sit with the silence like it's a riddle they'll never solve. You tried. God knows you did. You gave chances until you bled. You offered clarity until your own mind was cluttered. But now, the only explanation left is distance. You're not bitter. You're not angry. You're just done. And being done is powerful. Because when you stop explaining, you start evolving. When you stop trying to be heard, you start hearing yourself. And that voice inside the one that begged you to leave long before you actually did, that voice is finally loud. It's finally free. And that freedom, that's the reward silence gives to the ones who've been through hell and came back with boundaries made of fire. So let them talk to your ghost. Let them try to reach the version of you they buried under their own ego. That version doesn't live here anymore. The real you. You're building healing living. And most importantly, you're doing it without needing to explain why. Because you realize something they never did. Your silence isn't the absence of love. It's the presence of self-respect. And that silence, it's louder than every lie, every excuse, every fake apology they ever gave. It's the final word in a story they never thought would end, but it did. Quietly, completely, unforgivably. Now they see you from a distance and something in them aches, but they won't show it. Pride won't let them. Ego won't let them. They'll wear the same smile, walk the same walk, pretend like nothing shifted. But inside, they're crumbling, because silence does that. It plants seeds of doubt in places where arrogance used to grow. And now every step you take forward without them is a reminder of how easy it was for you to let go. Once you chose yourself, they thought you needed them, thought your world spun on their axis. But when you stopped explaining, you proved a truth that shattered their illusion. You were never the one who was lost. They were. They look for signs now. Watch your posts. Listen for any trace of pain in your words, hoping you miss them just a little. But what they don't understand is that silence changes a person. It strengthens the soul, straightens the spine. You don't just move on, you transform. You become someone they no longer recognize, because the version of you that tolerated their chaos, that begged for honesty, that stayed up at night, crafting paragraphs they'd skim through or ignore, that version died the moment your silence was born. And what replaced it is a colder, wiser, sharper version. One that doesn't ask for closure. One that is the closure. And that's what eats them up. That you're okay. That you're not looking back. That you never needed a dramatic ending to begin your. Healing people think silence is soft, that it's passive, that it means weakness. But it's not. Silence is surgical. It's clean. It's violent in its calmness. Because unlike noise, silence doesn't beg to be understood. It just is. And in your silence, you told them everything. You said, I don't need to explain myself to people who knew what they were doing. You said, I gave you enough of me. You just never gave anything back. You said, I'm not arguing with someone committed to misunderstanding me. And the best part, you said it all without opening your mouth. That silence, it roars. Now it walks into rooms before you do. It tells your story without needing subtitles. They'll tell others they don't care, that they're fine, that it didn't matter. But watch closely. The eyes always betray the mouth. And behind those empty stares is a mind racing with should-haves and what-ifs, wondering how they lost someone who never wanted to leave. wondering how they pushed away the only real thing they had. And the irony, it was never about you not being enough. It was always about them not being ready to face someone who was. But now, it's too late. You stopped explaining. You stopped breaking your soul into pieces just so they could feel whole. And in that decision you reclaimed everything they tried to diminish your voice, your power, your worth, without saying a single word. They'll remember you in quiet moments, the kind they used to share with you without even noticing. The late night silences, the random texts, the comfort of knowing you were there just one call away. Now that comfort is gone. Now every second of silence is their punishment. The absence of your voice, your energy, your effort. It screams at them louder than any angry outburst ever could. Because you didn't just disappear, you withdrew. You took back everything they thought they had a lifetime to drain from you. And you did it without malice, without revenge, without a goodbye. That kind of exit, that's what haunts people. Not the ones who leave in flames, but the ones who leave like ghosts, present in every room, yet completely unreachable. They never thought you'd become a stranger, but you did. Because love without respect breeds resentment, and resentment, when matured in silence, becomes detachment. And when you detach, that's it. No reset, no do-over, no let's talk. You're not punishing them, you're protecting yourself. From now on, your energy is sacred. Your peace is priority. Your time, no longer negotiable. You don't hand it over to people who spit on it just because they're sorry. Now let them be sorry. Let them drown in apologies. They'll never get to deliver. They had the privilege of your words, your explanations, your heart, and they fumbled it. Now they've got silence. Now they've got distance. And they've got the realization that this time, it's not a pause. It's permanent. And it doesn't matter if they change now. Doesn't matter if they finally get it. Because your silence wasn't a test. It was a decision. You gave them all the chances, and they exhausted everyone. They gambled with someone who never wanted to play games. They weaponized your love. And now they want grace. Number. Grace lived in your voice. In every conversation you stayed calm in every moment you tried to build when they were tearing down, grace was what you gave. When you had nothing left, silence. Silence is the result of grace being ignored too many times. It's what's left when love gets tired of performing CPR on a connection that flatlined long ago. They'll search for you and others, try to replace the soul they once called too much, but deep down, they'll know no one else will explain like you did. No one else will care like you did. No one else will try like you did. Because what you gave wasn't standard. It was sacred. And they mishandled it, abused it, took it for granted. And now, your silence is the only conversation left. A cold, echoing reminder that they had something real. Let it die. While they laughed, let them live with that. Let the silence be the shadow they can't escape. And let your peace be the proof that letting go was never a loss. It was the greatest win you never had to shout about. And as the days stretch on and the silence thickens, it stops being just a void. It becomes a presence, a constant, a force. Something they can't ignore, even when they try to. Because every time they try to reach for someone else, your absence touches their hand first. Every time they laugh with someone new, they hear your silence tucked behind their smile. That's the power you left behind, not in noise, not in revenge, but in a stillness that refuses to be erased. Because you were never just a person to them. You were an anchor, a home. And now that you're gone, everything feels adrift. Every room they walk into feels a little colder. Every moment of joy feels slightly incomplete. That's what silence does. It doesn't scream. It lingers. You see, they spent so long playing chess with your heart, thinking they had time, thinking you'd always be there, thinking they could treat you however they pleased and still keep you. But when you stopped explaining, they realized this wasn't a game anymore. The board flipped, the pieces scattered, and the opponent they thought they had figured out gone. You became unpredictable, unreachable, and that scares people who are used to controlling the narrative. They can't twist silence. They can't argue with it. Can't spin it to make themselves the hero. Your silence is a wall they can't climb, a truth they can't edit. It's a full stop in the middle of the sentence. They thought they were still writing. They'll try to fill the gap. Of course, try to replace you with someone easier, someone who doesn't challenge their demons, someone who doesn't love with the same fire. But it won't work because deep down, they'll always compare, and every smile they see, every voice they hear, every moment of fake connection will remind them of the real thing they lost. The person who saw through their masks, the one who tried when no one else would. And suddenly the silence you left behind becomes a benchmark, a ghost that never lets them settle. And the worst part, they'll know it's their fault. They'll know they had the chance to hold on to something pure, and they let it rot because they couldn't. They couldn't value what didn't hurt them to earn. But you'll be fine, more than fine, because you didn't just walk away. You walked into something better yourself. Your growth, your focus, your glow, the silence you gifted them became the space you needed to rebuild, to evolve, to become the kind of person they never deserved in the first place. You're not the same anymore. You're not the soft, breakable version they used to test. Now you're sharp, clear-grounded, and your silence is a boundary they'll never cross again. Because you're hiding, but because you finally realized you don't have to prove your worth to people who enjoyed watching you question it.